From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, Dr. Jason here, Dental Lighthouse podcast. I'm going to go a little non-dental today. About a week or two ago, I released a podcast talking about goal setting, and it was very well received. I appreciate that, and what my framework is for setting goals. But it has led to a number of people reaching out to me and asking about nutritional advice when it comes to the identity of being healthy, right? So real quick summary of what we talked about in that goals framework. In my opinion, and there's lots of ways to do this, in my opinion, it's less advantageous to state a goal from an objective perspective. I want to lose 15 pounds. I want to bench 300. I want to run a marathon. Like, important to have those objective goals, but there's lots of ways to lose 15 pounds. You can fast for 3 weeks and lose 15 pounds, but that's not the healthiest way to do it. You could take up smoking and just start smoking a cigarette every time you have a craving. That's not the healthy way to do it. So the framework that I've come up with, and I shared a few weeks ago, I shouldn't say come up with, because nothing could be further from the truth. I've basically stolen every idea that I have in my mind and then tweaked it to serve myself. But a lot of the ideas that I come up with this framework are ultimately from James Clear and Craig Groeschel. But the framework that I've come up with, that I use in my life, is who am I trying to become? Who am I trying to identify as? And in this particular situation, I'm trying to identify as a healthy individual. Why am I trying to identify as a healthy individual? You have to define that. And then how am I going to identify as a healthy individual? This is where it gets granular. This is the how, and the what is what I need to be doing on an hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis to get healthy. And this is where you type A dentist nerds kind of geek out, because now we're talking about objective things. And that's what I'm going to talk about here in terms of nutrition. So identify who you're trying to become, define why you're trying to become that person, and then define a goal. So in this particular case, let's say I'm going to try to lose 15 pounds. And then we talk about how and what we need to do. So at a high level, superficial level, it's been my experience that it's calories in versus calories out. Now you can find any type of wisdom online that talks about hormonal imbalances and talks about the specific types of foods you're eating, and I agree that definitely plays a role. But as someone that's really pushed their limits with their nutrition, last year specifically losing 30 pounds in about 10 weeks in preparation for a bodybuilding show, I've gained a tremendous amount of insight on what works for most people and what doesn't. So if you don't believe that calories in versus calories out plays a role, then just stop the recording, because you're not going to like the rest of what I have to say. First thing you need to do is identify what's a maintenance level of calories for yourself. There's lots of different ways to do it. You can get online and research a total energy expenditure calculator. You can take your body weight and add a zero. There's many ways to do it. The reality is none of them are terribly accurate. So you're going to have to experiment with it. What I would encourage you to do is to download some type of calorie tracking app. And for a couple weeks, you ultimately track everything that you eat, and you'll start to discover what a calorie maintenance number is for you. For me, depending on how much I'm moving or how many steps that I'm taking, it's traditionally about 2,700 calories. So if I need to take in 2,700 calories a day to maintain my weight, then what do I need to take in to lose some weight? Well, as you guys know, there's 3,500 calories in a pound. And if I'm trying to lose a pound of week, that means I need to, estimating, drop about 500 calories per day. So for you guys that don't love math, let's just review that. 500 calories per day times 7 days is 3,500 calories. So if I went from 2,700 calories per day, maintenance number, to 2,200 calories per day, I would, in theory, lose about a pound a week. Now, there's a lot of nuances there. The number one being, as you get smaller, your maintenance number goes down a little bit, but that's a conversation for another day. Most of us don't need to worry about that unless you're trying to get to, say, single digit body fat percentage. And if that's the case, please reach out to me. I can help you with that. But it has to do with calories in and calories out. And if you're trying to lose a pound a week, then roughly 3,500 calorie deficit per week, or about 500 calories per day, is a good goal. The next question you need to ask yourself is a pound a week a good goal? Again, if our identity is to be as healthy as possible or healthy individual, then a pound a week may be a good goal. It may be too fast of a weight loss goal. It may be too slow of a weight loss goal. The rate at which you lose weight has a lot to do with a number of different factors, primarily how much you weigh and how much of your body is fat versus muscle. And you can get online and figure all of that out, or you can reach out to me. But as a general rule, losing 1% of your body weight every week is a good goal. So if you currently weigh 200 pounds, then having a goal of 2 pounds per week in weight loss is a pretty good goal. Now, again, I don't want to paint with a broad brush and I don't want to be super black and white, but in most situations, 1% of your total body weight is a good goal. So if you weigh 200 pounds and you're trying to lose 1% per week, that's 2 pounds per week. Like we've talked about before, 3,500 calories in a pound. That means 7,000 calories total. That means you're going to need to drop 1,000 calories per day to lose 2 pounds per week. Now you may be thinking to yourself, 1,000 calories a day? Holy, no way can I do that. Well, it really just depends on where you're at. If you're currently at 3,500, 3,600, 3,700 calories a day, if that's your maintenance number, then going 1,000 calories per day down is not difficult. Not difficult long term. It may feel difficult in the beginning. So again, subtle nuances. Everybody's going to be a little bit different, but just realize that there's 3,500 calories in a pound, and realize that losing more than 1% of your total body weight on a weekly basis is not the healthiest thing to do, because you may be losing muscle along with fat and not just fat. So very, very dependent on your specific situation. But as a general rule, 0.75% to say 1.25%, or right in the middle, 1% of your body weight per week. So now that we know how many calories that we need to consume per day to reach our health and wellness goal, the next thing we have to unpack is, what specifically do I eat to consume those calories? So again, just going to talk in generalizations here. In my opinion, a very good rule of thumb is starting with protein, and you eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So there's other formulas out there. I know some of you nutrition geeks are going to be blowing me up, being like, well, that's not really true. It needs to be 1 pound per lean body mass. I get it. I 100% get where you're coming from. But this message is for 80% of the people out there. This is the 80-20 concept, right? So if you're trying to figure out how much protein to get per day, a really, really good rule of thumb is 1 gram per pound of body weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds, then you should be getting 200 grams of protein per day. Now, if you're not used to eating a lot of protein, I know right now that you're hearing this message and you're thinking, what a quack. There's no possible way that you can get that much protein. Or you're saying to yourself, the RDA suggests that a 200-pound person only needs 70 grams of protein per day. The RDA is wrong. It's a government listed value. And don't get me started about some of the information the government gives out. So that should be your number one rule. 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Once that is occurring, then you need to look at your fat consumption, grams of fat. Very, very important. Don't make the mistake of reducing your fat intake to unhealthy levels because you feel that's the best way to get into a calorie deficit. And I know this from experience. When you get below a certain percent of fat ingestion on a daily basis, your hormones start to go crazy. When I was preparing for my bodybuilding show, I felt the best way to get into a calorie deficit was to take my fat amounts and basically reduce them to as close to nothing as I could. And I was able to maintain a calorie deficit for a couple weeks doing that. But the side effect of that was that my hormones went crazy. My cortisol went through the roof. My testosterone went into the toilet. I was all over the place in terms of my mood. It's just not very healthy. So as a general rule, again, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And then when you go to fat, you want to get roughly 25 to 30% of your total calories from fat. So if you're in a situation where your goal is going to be 2,500 calories, 200 grams of protein, and then 30% of your calories from fat. So 2,500, a third of that is roughly 800. There's 9 grams, there's 9 calories in every gram of fat. So 800 divided by 9 is what? Roughly, doing the math in my head, don't quote me on this, roughly 72, I think, right? 70 times 9 is 6, yeah, let's say 80. So that's how much fat you need to get. And if you're trying to eat quote unquote super clean, it's going to be hard to get that amount of fat. I get it through nuts, olive oils, avocados, eggs, things like that. And then the rest, the carbohydrate, the third macronutrient, the rest is captured through carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the one macronutrient that in theory you don't really need, but it can play around with your energy levels. So if you decide on the amount of protein that you need, the amount of fat that you need, you just backfill the rest with carbohydrate. I'm going to just review this one more time just to make sure that I'm being clear, because I'm talking about a lot of information and most of you guys are listening to this. And I'm just trying to give you a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of wisdom to start the process, okay? Again, your identity should be one of I'm striving to be the healthiest person that I can be, or I'm striving to optimize my health. That should be the identity. Once you've come up with that identity, you need to define why that is your identity. It could be because you believe that your body is a temple for Christ and you need to maximize how healthy it is. It could be that you're trying to be a role model for your wife and kids from a health and nutrition perspective, and currently you're not that role model. It could be that you're trying to be more active with your kids in terms of playing basketball or skiing or whatever. So your reason is your reason, but you have to define that reason. Otherwise, when the motivation falls, you can go back to that why and it'll keep you going. So we know who you're trying to become. We know why you're trying to become that person. Now we need to talk about what and how what you're going to do on a regular basis and how you're going to do it. And again, just really quickly overview. Determine what your maintenance calorie amount is. That's the first thing. I would strongly encourage you to track your food. I use an app called Macro Factor. I think it costs $10 a month. I love it. But you can use something like MyFitnessPal. There's tons of them out there. So number one, determine what your maintenance calorie amount needs to be. Number two, determine your goal in terms of amount of body weight that you would like to lose. Number 3, discover what rate of body weight you should be losing per week. Remember, we said 1% is ideal. It has a lot to do with what your current body fat percentage is. Conversation for another day. Once you determine what that rate is, determine what your daily calorie deficit from your maintenance number needs to be. Once you know that number, take that number and figure out how much protein, fat, and calories you need to consume on a daily basis to hit your goal. Realizing that, in general, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, in general, 25 to 30% of your total calories from fat, and in general, backfilling the rest of your caloric amount with carbohydrates. So simple, just not easy. Hopefully that overview gives you guys a little bit of a head start on the best way to set up your diet and the best way to go about defining what your goal is and continually tracking to make sure that you reach your goal. Finally, we'll talk about tracking your goal. I weigh myself every day. I think there's a lot of really good reasons to weigh yourself every day. I think some people can get so mental with the number on the scale that as soon as it moves in a direction that they don't want to see, they abandon their entire philosophy and they go in a different direction. They don't stick to the plan. What I just described for you works 99% of the time. But when you get on a scale and you're 1 pound up from the day before, you're thinking to yourself, Jason's full of shit. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. I can promise you I do know what I'm talking about. Fluctuations in weight from day to day can occur from a number of reasons. One of the classic reasons is if you had a little bit more salt the day before in your meal, maybe you had some ham for dinner, or maybe you had a meal that was a little bit oversalted. Salt is going to lead to water retention, and water retention is going to lead to a bigger number on the scale. If you don't think water consumption plays a big deal in terms of your weight, weigh yourself and then drink a big glass of water and weigh yourself again. You're going to gain a couple pounds, right? Quote unquote, gain a couple pounds. Did you gain, let's say, 1.5 pounds? If you do this exercise and you get on the scale and it's 1.5 pounds difference, are you telling yourself that you gained 1.5 pounds of fat? That's ridiculous. So why do you feel like you're trending in the wrong direction when you get on the scale every day? And in particular situations, it could be 1 pound off here or there. If you're doing what you need to do, if you're practicing everything that I just shared with you at the beginning of this podcast, then you will ultimately get to your goal. You will see fluctuations on the scale. You'll go up a couple pounds, you go down a couple pounds. But when you track it over an 8, 10, 12-week period, I can assure you that if you are truly doing everything that I'm telling you to do, you will lose weight. All right, guys. Appreciate your patience, your time and attention listening to this overview. Just so many people reaching out to me and asking me about what I do for diet and nutrition. I thought it would be a good opportunity to share that with them. If you have any questions about that, if you want to unpack it a little bit more, don't hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information is on our website, dentallighthouse.com. Look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.